everybody. Today I wanted to share a story because it's the Yartzeit of the Shevet Mussar. The the author of the Shevet Mussar of Eliyahu ben Reb Shlomo Cohen. He lived in the late 1600s, early 1700s. He was the chief rabbi of Izmir, Turkey. One of the great Sephardic leaders, great Sephardic rabbis, great Sephardic Kabbalists um, of the 17th and early 18th century. He lived around the time of the Baal Shem Tov. He was born a little earlier and passed away a little earlier than the Baal Shem Tov. Born about 50 years before the Baal Shem Tov. And he was a great Kabbalist in addition to being a great rabbi, because in the Sephardic world in those days, it was, particularly in the Middle East, it was homogeneous to have all the different aspects of Judaism all in one. And he wrote over 40 Sfarim, over 40 religious books, various texts. His most famous, of course, as I mentioned, is Shevet Mussar, a book of ethical teachings. And in one of his Sfarim, a story that I heard from a friend of mine, a very chashuv rabbi, a Sephardic rabbi, told me this story. It's brought in the Sefer Minchas Eliyahu, one of the Sfarim that the Shevet Mussar wrote. A story that took place by him in Izmir, in Turkey. It's a fascinating story, and it has a tremendous fundamental idea in teaching in Kabbalah. In the Sefer Minchas Eliyahu, he demystifies a lot of the mystical teachings. People think that Kabbalah is mysticism, is secret, is magic, something, and he really demonstrates what it really is, and in a very practical way. And he shows how it's really more of an experience of realities that exist beyond, what we see. Is what science they would call extra-dimensional or trans-dimensional realities. And to bring a teaching of this is something that's very clear, a very interesting and clear teaching is brought when he tells a story that a fellow came to him and he says, Chacham, Rabbi, I have an issue. Now, most people would not know how to deal with such an issue, but in his wisdom, the Shevet Mussar understood exactly how to deal with this problem. A fellow came to the Shevet Mussar and he said, I'm having visions of four figures that come to me. And they present themselves as the following. Three say they're Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Another one says he's Gabriel, the archangel. And they tell me good things. But I'm kind of confused because I know I'm not on a high enough spiritual level to be worthy to such a great revelation. Now, most rabbis today, or even in other parts of the world in that time as well, for example, in Western Europe and so forth, where they were not as inclined into the study of Kabbalah, they would have simply said, oh, you're crazy, go to a psychologist, get out of here, they'd send them to a sanatorium. The Shevet Mussar not only talked about Kabbalah, he knew what he was talking about. And he knew exactly how to approach this issue. And it's a level of discernment that is developed through the study of Talmud, that in addition to the mitzvah that's involved in the study, it trains the mind on how to conduct itself, on how to discern things in an analytical fashion. So the Shevet Mussar said Next time these fellows come to you, these figures in the vision, ask them, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are you Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Avos HaOlam? Are you the patriarchs of the world, the ancient patriarchs? Or are you just three guys who got together, happen to have the names Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whether they're spirits, whether they're transdimensional beings, what we call Shadim, sometimes translates demons, but they're not exactly the way the world understands demons in other cultures. Who are you? Same thing. Gabriel. Are you the Archangel Gabriel? Or are you just a guy named Gabriel? Gabe Kaplan from Welcome Back, Kotter. His name's also Gabriel. You know? My name's also Yitzchak, you know? Do you happen to have a name? And you're just trying to fool me? Okay, go. Are you, or are you really the ones? Because they never said we are the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They never said I'm the Archangel Gabriel. They just said we're Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and people would assume they're the patriarchs. He never said I'm the Archangel Gabriel. Just said I'm Gabriel. So someone who wouldn't have any discernment would assume it's the Archangel Gabriel. What other Gabriel is there? Well, there's plenty of other Gabriels and plenty of other Abrahams, plenty of other Isaacs, plenty of other Jacobs. Not only in this world, but in other worlds too. As soon as he asked this question, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov never bothered him again. Gabriel gave him some problems. He's like, why did you reveal our secret? Why did you tell the rabbi? It's a secret just between you and me, which is also a dead giveaway when someone says something like that, whether in the material world or in the spiritual world, that it's bad news. And it was just some kind of a demonic force trying to take advantage of him. Eventually, he told the Rav what happened, and Rabbi Cohen gave him a kamea, gave him an amulet to scare away this demon whose name was Gabriel. And because of and from this, he didn't have any problems anymore. Particularly, at certain points, he said that they told him to do some things that were maybe questionable, dangerous, that, they were trying to get his trust in order to lead him astray so they could take advantage of him, which is what demonic forces tend to do. Not particularly when they're dealing with people. Most of them don't have to deal with people, and those are perhaps what we call demons are not necessarily evil in the Jewish tradition. They're just like people. Some are good and some are bad. They're really just trans-dimensional beings. And the same thing today. People have these visions that they're being abducted by aliens and so forth, but their descriptions of aliens are exactly the same as descriptions we find in the sacred literature of different demonic races that exist, and some that exist in different dimensions inside the earth and so forth. So whether it's transdimensional, whether it's physical, it's not really that important, but it's kind of silly to think that these beings would come from other galaxies just to bother people, to make such a long trek physically. It's rather absurd. Not to say that those places are not inhabited, but it's absurd to say that they would take all this travel just to take advantage of people like this. It's a silly thing, but rather they're beings that are within various dimensions. But really, the main point is not to teach about demons, not to teach about various dimensions. The main point is to have that discernment, to know what kind of questions to ask. This way you can discern between what's true and what's false. And that is the great lesson that we have here. And really, the Shevet Mussar, he brings that there in Minchas Eliyahu like that. He says that we see in the Talmud descriptions of demons, that they know the future and so forth, on one hand. On the other hand, we see descriptions that the Rabbi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rav Yehuda Hanassi, the redactor of the Mishnah, would come make Kiddush for his family Friday night after he died. And how did he do it? And how did they know it was him? And the answer was that the the forces of tumah, forces of impurity, are not able to come in the form of anything holy. The thing is, so since the people knew what Rabbeinu Kodesh looked like, they could not be fooled. If you see a vision of someone that you know what they look like and they were a righteous person, that cannot be a demonic force. However, if someone claims to be someone and you don't know what they look like, you have no way of knowing. If someone comes along claiming to be Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Elijah, whoever it is, you have no way of knowing because you don't know what they look like. So, for this reason, but on the other hand, if someone comes and says that the Chayz, the Satmar Rebbe, the Baba Rebbe, the Baba Sali, Ben Ish Chai, we know what they look like, the Chavetz Chaim, but the real picture of the Chavetz Chaim, that's the thing. For example, the picture everyone shows of the Baal Shem Tov is not the picture of the Baal Shem Tov. So, the picture everyone shows of the Chavetz Chaim is not the Chavetz Chaim. But there are real pictures of Chavetz Chaim too. Such pictures cannot be, if you have such a vision, it can only be that actual person visiting. But if it's someone who you don't know what they look like, and they're just making a claim, so you have to ask the right questions. And that is not only in the spiritual world, that's also when dealing in the material world. Of course, there's more falsehood in in the material world than there is in the spiritual worlds, but there is just as much, if perhaps in this world as a world has more falsehood than truth. But in the spiritual worlds, there are so many spiritual worlds, myriads upon myriads of spiritual worlds, that each one, even that has a little bit of falsehood, some do and some don't, that the falsehood can fool people, and that's where you have all these different spiritual experiences that people experience, many of which are falsehood, but still, a lot of those people still, who are under those influences, still can live good and moral lives, even being taught spiritual falsehoods. And that we can show from a biblical standpoint from Malachi chapter 1 verse 11. And you can look that up. So anyway, the schus of the Heilige Tzaddik, the Rav of Izmir, the Izmir Rav, the Shevet Mussar, we should all be gebenched with the Marbim B'Simcha, and with discernment. We should be all blessed with the discernment which all ultimately we have to get from the blessings of Almighty God directly, and really not to be involved so much in these various spiritual worlds. These worlds exist, God created them, but they really have not too much to do with us. We have to be involved with this world, and too much involvement in Kabbalistic matters is dangerous, because people can be very easily misled. That's another lesson of that story, that we see this person, if he didn't go ask his Rav, and if his Rav didn't know how to answer, he could have been fooled into following these demonic forces, trying to pass themselves off as the patriarchs and an archangel, and it was all lies. So too, that's the type of discernment that we have to have, not to be fooled, but only to stick to the Torah. That's the light of our eyes, and that's the only true way. And in that merit, like in this week's Parsha, Rashi brings that Moshe Rabbeinu, he blessed the people. V'inoim Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu Maseh Edin K'Aleinu Maseh Edin K'Nehu. What it says in the Psalm of Moses, chapter 9, is Psalm 90, which is in the title is the Psalm of Moses, the prayer of Moses, that the pleasantness that Moses blessed the people in this week's Parsha, the pleasantness of the Lord our God should be upon us, and God should establish the work of our hands, and God should establish everything, because ultimately it's not the work of our hands, it's ultimately everything is directly from Almighty God, who is an Achdus Apashut, the simple unity and in that course we should be zeiche to simcha and success and happiness and all good things. Kaltus, take care. Baruch Adonai L'olam Amen.